Hey guys, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to go over the ICCT and also going to go over COSM, when it had that reverse split, the glitch, and then, the two parabolic moves that followed. I'll go over the details coming into ICCT, why COSM was like relevant to it, and also show how I traded both of them. I saw a lot of confusion on this name and a lot of shorts, get bent when they probably didn't really need to if they had just, taken the time to understand the scenario. So hopefully this helps. But then again, also hopefully it doesn't help them because for the next one you really need a lot of shorts for this trade to work. Okay. So first I'll go over like the merger details, like why it was quite confusing. So ICCT pretty much was going to merge with FGMC, which was a SPAC, and ICCT was OTC listed so that they can go to the NASDAQ or whatever. And so ICCT shares, the OTC ones would be converted to common stock, and they would do that through a 25/746 split, pretty much, just divided by nearly 30. And prior to the merger, ICCT, it had a market, it wasn't the most liquid, but it definitely traded in a range. I'll show that on the next slide. And it traded around $5 to $6 per share, split adjusted. So that's here. So in the box, you can see like it just held up there. And then you can see this is before the split. It was like a penny stock. So that just helps. So you can know like the amount of shares and stuff coming into it. All right, and then August 18th, they had their special meeting, which is where they approved the merger and they disclosed how many shares were redeemed. So this is just so you can get an idea of like what the float was and how many shares were outstanding before the merger. So ICCT had 197 million, which is around 6.6 million shares when you adjust it for the split. And FGMC, after all the redemptions, I didn't include the insert, but if you just look at the AK, you can see that they redeemed like 6 point something million. Oh yeah, sorry, I have it here. I'm retarded. So the float was around 2.3, and I just added them together. I could be off by a little bit, so I'm just guessing the float was around 9 million. And that's just more to like just get a good gauge, right? And obviously prior to the split, it traded sub 20 cents, so you can imagine a lot of their shareholders are going to have large quantities of shares, right? Seeing as it was such a cheap stock, similar to COSM, right? But first, I'll go over what happened with COSM, and then we'll go back to ICCT because this is just a good example. So what happened with COSM is brokers failed to adjust their share size to reflect the split. And the COSM one was a little bit tricky because they announced it like last minute. So I think for most people it was hard to be aware of it. And so uninformed longs the next morning, they're pretty much selling shares they did not own. And that's really a result of brokers failing to adjust the share count. So for example, Billy, let's say he owns 25,000 shares the prior day at 33 cents, which is where it closed. And then he wakes up and he sees the stock is at $6, but in his platform, it still says he owns 25,000 shares. So to him, he's going to be thinking he made like 100, whatever, 100 something grand. But in reality, he should only own 1,000 shares. So you can imagine a lot of people, they wake up, they look at their phone, they say, oh my God, up a ton of money. So they just sell straight away. And obviously the float is tiny. And so when you have all these old shares, right, 1 to 25 split, and it was a cheap stock, you can imagine, there's just not enough, bidding there to hold the price up. So, that obviously will crater the stock, and later people like Billy, they're going to end up short, 24,000 shares, right? So they're going to go from really supposed to own 1,000 shares to being short 24,000 shares. And depending on where they sold, unless you were the first couple, you'll see in the next slide, they would have probably sold at very low prices, right? So now hundreds of thousands of shares, if not millions, are being sold by Billy and his other COSM friends. And the float is also a lot smaller now, as a result of the split. And you can see COSM should have been trading at the yellow line. So I'm using, also for ICCT, the yellow line is where it was trading pre-split, right? So later, whenever you see the yellow line, that's what that is. It should be around there, probably off by like 20, 30 cents. I just did it, just drew it. And you can see, when it opened, right, it opened at $6, which is fine. Sometimes they open at a small discount, but it then cratered down to a low of 20 cents, right? And, so that's that. So you can imagine, hundreds of people like Billy, selling millions of shares thinking their stock was gapping up, but it wasn't. And you tie that in with a much smaller float, and I think there's a really good chance that there's a lot more shares short than what the actual float is. And with COSM, it was a lot easier for people to figure out quickly what happened because, that was a name that was in play recently at a Parabolic short. It was a large retail base. And so, brokers start to realize quickly what happened, and then, Billy and his friends will start seeing that they're actually net short in their accounts, and instead of being net short a little bit, they're short 25,000 shares, right? And I mean that's a lot, and like $1 for for someone who, a lot of these guys probably have small accounts, and then they find out they're short, you know 10 times the amount of size like the money they even have in their account, and you obviously got a big problem, right? And obviously when their accounts start going negative, which could be really quickly, brokers are forced to start buying them in. So this is how I traded it. Now, coming into the day, I had never seen this before, but I think I did a good job realizing quickly what happened. So I kind of just bought it on a whim for no real reason, and I sold pretty quickly. But then when I sold, I realized what happened, what the potential risk is, which I'll go over in the next slide. But I pretty much bought it right back in. And then to me, coming to the open, it's like, okay, the stock is still trading way below where it is, and I know that there's a massive chance that there's way, way, way more shorts than what the float is. So this is not something that it has much downside to it. And so into the open, I sold just a tiny bit, and then I was just buying it back when price was showing to me that it was holding and couldn't go lower. And so at this point, I think the key thing to remember is this whole time for the first couple hours, it's still trading below $8, where it should have opened up. And you just know that there's so many more shorts than longs in this name that what really is the risk of going long something like this, right? There is really not much downside. You could even just treat it as an arb if you want, right? Buying it here, looking for a move back to 8, um, and then as it started going high, I mean, look, it only got above 8, at 230. So definitely I was selling a bit prematurely, but I got most of my sells up here. um, and yeah, so that's kind of just how I traded, thinking there's a really big chance that there's way more shorts than there should be. And you're buying anywhere here, you're buying at discounts to where this should be. You know what I mean? So to me, that was just like probably since I started trading, probably the best opportunity that there's been. It was super liquid as well, etc. So that was COSM. So that should give you an idea of what happened. Now the only thing to be aware of is these trades can be broken. So this happens, it's not like the most rare thing. Like you probably get this a couple times a year, but a lot of the times Nasdaq or NISA will just cancel their trades. As well, if you just see like some really weird big misprints in the pre-market or after hours, or even something like on top, right, when SEC disclosed they wanted that stock halted, right, that traded still for a couple hours, but then they came back and canceled all those trades. So that's usually what happens. And so the issue is, so let's say you just don't know where they're going to cancel below or between what time, right? So because they could say, okay, we're only canceling trades under $1. So let's say you bought 1,000 shares at $1 and then you sold it at $3, but then Nasdaq said, hey, we're canceling all the trades under $1.50. Then that means you're going to end up short at $3, right? So that was a lot of the reason why like I bought back straight away, because I realized as soon as I sold to me, I was like, oh my god, I fucked up. And so that was that. Okay, so back to ICCT. So on the day of the glitch, so just here for reference, same thing as COSM, but a lot more complex, right? Because it had all those other variables involved. It wasn't just a reverse split, not just that. It was a merger, SPAC was involved, uplist, etc. But I think the key thing is, it was a 20-cent stock, and we know at least E-Trade, Short Bear, he put out a tweet with this screenshot. They were one of the guys that were. So this is, for example, one guy, right? Tim, we'll call him Timmy. So he sold 5,000 shares. If he sold for $30,000 profit, stock was 20 cents. I'm just assuming he sold it around $2.50. Don't know. But he sold 5,000 shares when in reality he should have only had 160. So Tim is likely net short 4,800 shares or so at around $2.50. Now I think the key thing is why this one took a little bit longer is day one. It was a much thinner stock and a lot of people like weren't even aware of it. So what happens is, let's say Timmy, let's say he sold it here, he shorted it here. Well, he was never really out the money, right? So there was no real reason for him to panic cover. Let's say even if it did adjust day one and he sees that he's short, he's probably like, oh my god, what's happening? I remember exactly with COSM, a lot of those guys that were short, they didn't even know what was happening, thought it was a glitch. So they would just wait. They were just waiting and not doing anything. So there was really no reason as well on this day, for like a squeeze to sort of happen. And most people obviously weren't aware. But yeah, Odd Diligence, he was the first one to call it out. So yeah, he always posts good ideas, so I'd definitely go follow him, and that's the link to his tweet if you want to read his initial thoughts. And the yellow line, this is where it was trading pre-merger, so you can see, it closed down 70%. All right. And then the day after the glitch, more people start being aware of what happened. This is going to be this move here. And brokers as well. So, if the brokers didn't adjust the share size the prior day, then I'm sure a lot of them will start doing that on the next day. And so someone like Timmy, he'll wake up and see that he's actually short 5,000 shares when the prior day maybe he thought he just made $13,000, right? And as well, a lot of people start to realize that, oh wow, this is trading, down 60%, 70% from where it should be. And just like COSM, you'll get those natural longs in playing for the arb trade, which, will result in like a steady bid as well from the other guys being forced to cover. And what happens is you also get a lot of intraday. I know a lot of people were shorting this name on day 2, because they see, wow, this was down at $1. Now all of a sudden it's up to $3-4. It's like, oh my god, for no reason, let me short. And I think one of the big things was that this ended up getting news halted, right? So the reason why I think this is a big thing is because shorts never really had a real reason, like the intraday shorts as well as the prior days shorts. They didn't really have too much time to cover or a real reason to, right? There was no like parabolic move that blew everyone out. It was kind of just started holding, you could say it was making lower lows. And those people still think, oh, $1, this is going to go back to $1 and it's trading at 6, 7. It's like, why would I cover here if I can get another $2-3, right? So then when they news halt this intraday, to me that tells me that there's just going to be a lot of those intraday shorts as well as the overselling shorts that have them covered. And so yeah. So then next morning, right, it opens flat. And to me, I posted my Days of Naive Unknowns there, and I sent a couple buddies. Is if this opens flat, it's like, what is the real risk of going long, knowing that there's all those shorts from the prior day who didn't get a chance to cover because it was halted, and it's trading at around where it should, right? So to me, that was just a really good asymmetric bet to go long. And I'll go over my executions in a sec. And so I did that, and yeah. So I'll go over that first, and then also this part here. So and then also when it pulls in off the open, it's just the same thing really, right? Like that there's going to be a lot of shorts, trading this. In terms of longs, there's probably not that many in this name, and it's still trading at around where it should, right? So what really is the risk of going long at $5-6? When this keeps proving that I can't go lower and it still continues to do higher lows. So what I did, this is the only screenshot I have because TraderView doesn't show the pre-market ones. So I bought when it resumed, and I added when it was proving what I expected, and then I cut and I sold. And to be honest, I thought this was most of like the move done, because it did a good amount of volume, and considering this was already like day 3 and they already had the whole prior day to trade, I expected that a good amount of especially the overselling shorts, which is the main thing, would have been out by this point. So yeah, but then I got back in long. I didn't hold this for long. I sold it like right into the up or above, because I didn't really, I failed to have that, really good imagination that this, was not over. And I think the key things to think about is, it just really still never ever really gave, shorts a real reason to get out. Also, when something is very complex, most people just won't understand, and they'll still go on the theory like, oh yeah, this is back at $1, that I can look for a move back down. But either way, it just proved the whole day that it's just, holding up higher lows. And at this point, this breakout here, I think, if you guys remember the COSM chart, you had all the force buying to the close, so you got that really nice move. This breakout here, I think, is just, a decent idea coming into 230. Thinking like all the shorts that have been trading all day and the prior day are finally getting exhausted and are going to give up on this name. No one wants to hold it overnight. And then you have also the force buying from brokers who, by the looks of it, probably isn't done, and etc. So that was a nice breakout, I would say, as well. And I think that's, mostly my thoughts for it on this day. And yeah, my executions you saw. And then the only other thing I'll say is I thought the after hours, gave pretty much nearly the exact same setup as we saw in BTGN earlier this month. And actually Lance, he did a really good like a short TikTok video on it, and I would suggest to see it, dissecting his how he would have traded VTGN and his thoughts, and to me that was the same thing. So yeah, hopefully you learned something, and if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching.